So I think I'm in a really good place. And to me, I look back on it, it just shows that God does have a perfect plan. And it's nice to be able to identify it for sure.
So that's the other thing is that you're a convert to the church. And so tell us a little bit about how did that come about? So I recently had the chance to interview Burgess Owens. Burgess is a convert to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, an NFL Super Bowl champion, and a current U.S. Congressman for the state of Utah. So as a preface to my interview with him, I figured I would preview a speech that he gave to the nation a few years ago as a brief introduction to this unique Latter-day Saint and his inspiring story.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Burgess Owens. Shackled in the belly of a slave ship, an 8-year-old boy named Silas Burgess came to America to be sold on an auction block. By the grace of God and the courage of slaves who believed in freedom, Silas escaped through the Underground Railroad and settled in the great state of Texas. He went on to become a successful entrepreneur. He built his community's first church, first elementary school, and purchased 102 acres of farmland, which he paid off in 2 years. I'm here today, a candidate for Congress, because of my great-great-grandfather, Silas Burgess. I was raised in the South during the days of Jim Crow and the KKK. Even through the challenges of segregation, we were taught that anything is possible in America. When I was 22 years old, I thought all my dreams had come true when I was drafted by the New York Jets. 10 years later, with a Pro Bowl nod and a Super Bowl championship under my belt, I left the NFL to start a business. I thought I could never fail, but years later I did, and I lost everything. As I moved my family of 6 into a 1-bedroom basement apartment in Brooklyn, New York, I had a choice to make: to feel sorry for myself or get to work. I worked as a chimney sweep during the day and a security guard at night. It was humbling to be recognized cleaning a chimney by someone who once cheered me as an NFL fan. But those hard days would pay off, and eventually I started a rewarding career in the corporate world. We live in a country where we're encouraged to dream big, where second chances are at the core of our American DNA. We don't hear that same message from Nancy Pelosi's Congress. Career politicians, elitists, and even a former bartender want us to believe it's impossible. They want us to believe that what I did, what my great-great-grandfather did, is impossible for ordinary Americans. As patriots, we know better.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Thoughtful Faith. I'm your host, Jacob Hansen, and today I am joined by a very, very special guest today, the Congressman from Utah, Burgess Owens. Congressman Owens, thank you for coming on.
Jacob, looking forward to chatting with you. And again, I'm excited to go through these topics we're going to be talking about for sure.
Awesome. Excellent. So one of the things, it's funny, I was getting ready for this interview, and I've had a lot of different guests on my show, theologians and scholars and people of various walks. But I think the thing I was most excited for was having on a Super Bowl champion on my show. This is a first for me. So tell everybody a little bit about your football background here before we get into other stuff, because that's something that a lot of people, I think, will find interesting.
Well, first of all, I grew up in a really remarkably, I would say, good time for me. It was the segregated South, Tallahassee, Florida. When I said it was a good experience, because in the community I grew up in, we were focused on faith, the family, the free market education. And because of that, we just had such high expectations on us. So I actually went to the University of Miami. The goal was not to actually be an NFL player. This is before that was actually a goal for many kids. I went there because I wanted to be a marine biologist. My dad was a college professor for 40 years at Florida A&M, and they were very much into education. So we traveled the country. 5 years old, I lived in Liberia, Africa. We was doing research at the time. And so going to the University of Miami, I played there for 4 years. I was drafted to the Jets. Played in the NFL for 10 years. And my last 3 was with the Raiders. It was a chance to finally get, after 12 years of continual losing seasons, to get with one that had this culture of winning, which was a remarkable experience to have, to say the least. So finished up my last 3 years with the Raiders, and then went out to begin life in the real world with 6 kids, 17 grandkids now.
That's so awesome.
We sent them all to go out to University, BYU and USU, UVU. and they decided to stay. So about 10 years ago, we decided to follow, and it's been the greatest move I could have made. My family's all in Utah. I want to make sure that we can keep that going, and it's a great state. For what I'm doing now, it really makes a difference in terms of being an example of how states can be run, the collaboration, the diversity, the idea of service, which we're very unique in that regard. So I think I'm in a really good place, and to me, I look back on it, it just shows that God does have a perfect plan. And it's nice to be able to identify it for sure.
So that's the other thing, is that you're a convert to the church. And so tell us a little about how did that come about?
Well, again, when I think back on it, I was when I got to the Raiders, I got to be good friends with a fellow who's actually he came out of BYU, Todd Christensen, and a Mark Wilson. So I had a chance to play with them for 3 years, and just watching the way they responded to life, whether winning or losing, their attitudes. We got to be good friends, particularly with Todd. So when the timing was right, and the timing was right with me, when I had my little girl, Summer at the time was 3 years old, I had decided that we decided it was important to find some type of faith that she can grow up in. I grew up as a Baptist, and I just kind of drifted away from that. My wife was a Catholic, and she drifted away from that. So we were looking for something, and my friendship with Todd gave me an opportunity to at least trust him. So we started having conversations. I believed what he was telling me, and of course, a big part what was for me to gain that testimony of my own. So I was baptized my last my the was it New Year's Eve of the last year I played football.
Wow,
So I
that's
ended up leaving
incredible.
the NFL in that regard, and it's been a great journey since, to say the least.
And what would you say, what influences has your, faith in Jesus Christ, and specifically in the restored gospel, what effect has that had sort of on your political outlook and philosophy?
Well, it drives everything. Once you understand that Heavenly Father does have a perfect plan, you begin to gain a testimony of why we're really here, the things that are important, things that are not, the idea of being disciplined enough to really keep Him first. Those kind of things. If you once you in my case, once I really got my testimony, and I realized on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week, on a year-to-year basis, to do my very best, you get in certain habits, and
Mhm.
one of the habits is to be courageous when you need to be. Be okay if somebody doesn't like you. Be okay if somebody doesn't agree. The key is we're here for a particular reason. With me, I think the biggest part of that conversion was I was able to find my mission in life. It was not playing football. I mean, football was a great avenue. It was good. It was not corporate sales. Corporate sales was a way for me to make sure I was taking care of my family. But the mission that I've been put here to do comes back from, again, the community I grew up in, the the idea of seeing such success when I was a kid, and see that being we're losing it. See our kids losing that belief that they can do things. See our the parents coming through, not being able to define what parenting was all about, what
Mhm.
men should look like, and how they should make sure they're taking care of their families. So when I left the NFL, um, that was part of my mission: is how to get a message out to these young people. And I look back 40 years later, that's still my mission. I'm just in a different place. I would say a very important place for me to make a difference in a much broader way. In a state, again, talk about God's perfect plan, in a state that does it best in terms of collaboration, focus on our kids. We have a culture that's based on service. You think about what we do. We
Yeah.
spend 18, 19 years getting our kids ready so they can go out and go to places nobody wants to visit. We celebrate when they leave. We celebrate when they come back. That is a very special culture because I don't see it anyplace else. And when you have that, you have kids coming back that are very empathetic. Number one, they're risk takers. They know what it is to get outside their comfort zone. If they've developed that culture, that testimony, they want to carry that for their lifetime and pass it to their kids. So it's a culture that I'm very excited to be part of. To be honest with you, to represent, and I'm very bold about my dependence on our Lord and Savior, um, and the gospel that can really bring happiness to everyone. When I've always thought that one of hopes is that uh, when I was coming through 40 years ago, the black community had not really been exposed a whole lot to our church,
Yeah.
and that's changing in a big way.
Mhm.
And I've always wanted to be part of that process, to be kind of the example of what we need to do to get back to the community I grew up in. I just want to segue for a quick second because I think it's
Yeah.
important as I talk about my growing up to let your audience know what that really means. Uh, you see, during that time, my first exposure to white Americans didn't happen until I was 16 years old. So my whole structure, my core, my beliefs, my patriotism, my respect, my belief that we can overcome anything came from that community that I grew up in.
Hmm.
Uh, it was a community that because it was determined to command respect, that we really dug in deep to make sure that we hustled. We wanted to be successful. There's a values set that I'm finding that any community that has this succeeds. And our value set is faith, family, the free market, and education. And we had doubled down into that as a community. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, because of that concept, because we wanted to uh, command respect from other races to look at as very successful Americans. We did it through meritocracy. You run harder, you study harder, you work harder. When somebody tells you can't, you prove that you can. That was the environment I grew up in. So the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and this is something that most Americans have not been taught, because there's an effort to keep the truth of who we are as a nation and the growth that we have experienced a secret. There are those who do not want us to be a tight knit, we the people, become a much better society, and and we should understand, because we know that everything is a spiritual process. We understand that now.
Hmm.
So here's something that many Americans have not heard. The reason why I don't think it's hypothetical, what can happen once you put things in the right place. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, the black community, segregated community, led the country in the growth of the middle class. Men matriculated from college. Men committed to marriage. Up to the 1970s, black women had a higher percentage of marriage than white women did, because men in our community knew that you were not going to be respected if you don't take care of your kids, don't take care of your wife. The goal is to have a good name you can pass down as a legacy, and those who didn't do it were not looked at as really being true men. So the commitment to marriage was a very strong one. And of course, business ownership. There was, since we didn't go outside a community, just imagine a community that had the same needs, but we did it from within. So we're very self-sufficient, whether it be Baker's Pharmacy, Speed Grocery Store, Perkins Service Station, the doctors, the plumbers, teachers. Teaching was a big thing. We respected our teachers because it was a society that felt that education was our gateway to success. Uh, so and the message that came from all those adults was, first of all, respect. You respect elders. I can kind of summarize it in one term. As young men, we're taught to love God, country, family, respect women, and authority. And if you didn't, then you had dad to deal with. It was no question. There was no argument. That was the way it was done, and every family felt the same way.
And it's funny as you're talking about this, because I remember when I first learned this history. So I was brought up with sort of the traditional narratives about the nature of America in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, and all bad. And I was just and then I studied Thomas Sowell and his work, and my eyes were opened. It was like, wait a minute, what you're talking about is exactly what was happening, and a lot of people don't realize it. And then things changed, and now, as you're saying, the importance of fathers and things like that were so critical. And when you take that away, everything just kind of falls apart.
Well, you think about the gospel of Jesus Christ, we're taught about responsibility roles. When you think about the Declaration of Marriage, was it the Family Proclamation?
Yes.
Now, this was back when in the mid 1996 or 97, 95. Okay.
Yeah.
And when it came out, it was kind of, well, I mean, what's the big deal? I mean, seriously, it's sure this is what the family is, because we all believe that. We look back on it now and realize how important it was to put that out, because we're already under attack. If you take the man his role out of the family, just like you take the woman and her role out of the family, you get a very dysfunctional, a very unhappy family with kids grow up with no direction at all. They have to try to find themselves, and they make a lot of mistakes. Some can never come back for the mistakes they make because they just never had the examples. We now have in my community, again, keep in mind, when I was growing up, um, 80% of men, between 70 to 80% of the men committed to the mother of their kids. Um, so we had two family homes. We now have just flipped that. Between 70 to 80% of black men today desert their family. And there's no sense of shame. There's no sense of pressure from peer groups that you need to get this right. And I think that's what's changing now, by the way. I think black men particularly are beginning to realize that they want to be respected. They want to have people look at them with respect, with respect for their name. They'll look back in the mirror and realize that their life means something. And if you go the way of those who hate faith, family, free market education, then it's real. It's a spiritual war we're dealing with. And if you go that route, you leave you have a very miserable life and wonder, what was this really all about? We don't want to be there, obviously.
Absolutely. Now my show is not inherently political, but it's one that can't help but cross wires with the political environment because, as far as I can tell, the political emerges from the spiritual.
Yeah.
Right. And so if the spiritual is off in a nation, its politics will be off. And
Yeah.
I think that there's something to be said that there's a lot of spiritual illness in our nation that causes a lot of these problems. Now, one of the things that, so we right now are facing an election.
Mm-hmm.
And while this show is not overtly political, it is a place where I want to be able to have discussions with people about specific things related to the political matters that face us, such as this election. Specifically, there are a lot of Latter-day Saints who are maybe nervous about voting for Donald Trump. Now, we've just talked a lot about the family here. And the importance of family. This is one of the probably key things that Latter-day Saints believe in and care about. How would you characterize or what are your thoughts on the different ways that somebody like Kamala Harris versus President Trump approach the importance of the family, mothers and fathers, and those kinds of things?
Well, the upside, and this is what I think is important for particular members of the church, we have to prioritize what's really important. When I think about how sometimes people make decisions based on personality of people we don't really know, we just hear about.
Yeah.
I want you to remember Alma the Younger. We have no idea what his personality was. We just know he was a mess at one point. But then it turned out to be one of the more influential, consequential people in the Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because Heavenly Father saw a way to use him. We have to continue to remember that this is a spiritual battle. There's good versus evil. And we have to look at the policies and see, are these policies good or evil? And if the person that is trying to bring good to our country, it doesn't matter whether we like his personality or whether Heavenly Father is using him. At the end of the day, we have right now I have a very hopeful view of our nation, one that is finally coming together because we're talking about issues that have been very, very painful for us. I mean, the issues, the policies we're talking about, look at where we are right now. We have inflation. I don't know if you want to get into the details, but we have inflation that's just driving away the dream. We have our young people now that as young as 6, 7 years old they're talking about sex and gender fluidity, and that's not normal. That's not right. Where we have the idea that the family unit is really not looked at as a place that we should all strive to be. We're looking at faith being put down and being censored, and you think about this. We had the COVID. The places that were closed down are the things that truly drive our country. Small business ownership. The free market is important because that small business owners actually power our middle class. Mm-hmm. Our middle class is where they find the culture that defines our country. That's where you have the desire to have a good name. We have a risk takers. You have service. You have an empathy because you've come from a certain place, you get it and you want to give back. Those things that really make our country the remarkable draw is because we have a middle class that's very robust. Take away the small business owner, destroy that, you destroy our middle class. We had a series of time where churches were shut down, small businesses, not big businesses, small businesses were shut down. The things that, it was something Thomas Jefferson said, ignorant and free can never be. Our founders understood that the only way we can survive as a nation is to be thinkers, to be critical thinkers, to be able to read and write, to have conversations like we're having right now.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we didn't agree, the key is once you have confidence in yourself, you can talk to somebody and still be respectful because you're looking long term. We'll disagree, but I'm going to be nice. I'm going to be respectful because one day you might come across. It might be 10 years from now, but we can be friends. That's what happens when you have an educated people. When you don't have that, people are going to pick up a stick and hit you because they're frustrated. They don't know what else to say. And that's where we were drifting. So know that this is a spiritual battle. So I want my friends that are listening out there, please don't get caught up in the things that really don't matter. Many people don't know me. You hear my voice, you have no idea what my personality is. You have no idea. I grew up as a very, very strong introvert that I had to really work to come out to be able to have conversations like this. Very shy. Now, that's my personality. What makes me who I am is what I'm willing to do with what I have. Am I able to really overcome those fears? Am I willing to go out and serve others? If I don't get it right all the time, am I ready to improve? Those are things we don't read about the imperfect people in the Book of Mormon. We have no idea. We just know that their end game was to serve and help and uplift.
And you said something that really struck me there is people can have different opinions about Donald Trump. Full kind of disclosure. Like I always tell people I'm a Ron DeSantis guy, but obviously in the current situation, like I'm 100% for Donald Trump being elected president.
Mm-hmm.
And that is because I do look at those policies and I ask myself, do I want to do good? Or do I just want to feel good because I'm against someone because their personality doesn't jive with me in one way or another?
Yeah.
And I look at it and I look at those policies and I say, okay, what is actually, are we better today after 4 years of Biden and Harris? Or were we better after our 4 years with President Trump? On all sorts of issues. And I thought I might ask you about some of those. For instance, what are your thoughts on the sort of when you compare Kamala Harris and President Trump on the issue of peace and peacemaking in the world, avoiding war? What is your view on sort of the comparison between Kamala Harris and President Trump on that issue on war?
Well, that's obvious. That's the thing. The upside about where we are is that history is very short. It's only 4 years. I think the key is that listeners be honest with themselves. What really is important to you right now? Is it important that your child or your children or those around the country growing up with they want to become a more perfect union, that they understand their past, they're not being taught to hate each other based on exterior criteria versus interior. So things like DEI. Who pushes the DEI? The DEI is as Marxist as it can get. And for those who don't understand Marxism, is those who hate faith, family, the free market education. It's those who want to divide us. It wants to destroy. It was Karl Marx who said the first battleground is rewriting of history. Why do you want to rewrite American history unless you want to take away the pride in our past, appreciation for our present, and a vision for our future? That's the only reason you steal American history. If you take American history for what it is, you look at someone like myself who grew up in a segregated community. My first experience with white Americans wasn't until I was 16 years old. To now have a family of 6 kids, 17 grandkids, and within my family of 6 kids, they represent Black, white, Hispanic, American Indian, and Trinidadian. We call each other family. My grandkids call each other cousins. That's what America has always looked to be, a much better, more perfect union. So I think everyone who's listening really need to do their own homework. I mean, we can kind of go through all the issues: war, inflation. We have invasion at the border that's going to tear our country apart, when you start pushing and overwhelming your school system, your city system. You have a city built for 20,000 people. All of a sudden, you add another 10 within a few months. Things are not going to work out right.
Yeah, and it's funny because the immigration one is one that I think a lot of Latter-day Saints, especially having served foreign missions, we look at these people from other countries and we're like, oh, we think, oh, if these people want to immigrate to our country, that's great. But I've always thought we also believe in honoring and sustaining the law. And I always think it's the analogy I use is cutting in line.
Yeah.
Like, we have a line. If you're entering the country illegally, you're cutting in line.
Yeah.
And you're hurting the very people who are honoring, obeying, and sustaining the law. To have a broken immigration system and to just say, go ahead and cut, that's just spitting in the face of the people that are trying to do it right.
And it's a little bit more to it than that. That's actually one of the real basic things of fairness. But what we have to do is we need to put on, instead of being sympathetic, let's be empathetic to American people who are now suffering. We now have inflation where kids in Utah, young people cannot afford to buy homes now because there's such a flow of people getting apartments and renting out to illegals. We have a system in which we're looking at welfare and in a good sense. You come in, you want to teach people how to assimilate. Assimilation is a big piece of who we are, by the way. Assimilation very simply says this: people come here wanting to be American, want to know our American ways, our culture. They don't want to come in and make our culture their culture. The reason why the American way is always America has always been the melting pot. It doesn't matter what community comes here; they cannot wait to become American citizens. They will stop using their language in their home so their kids can learn the English language, so they can assimilate. And assimilation is when we, the people, we become one. We're a country that believes in being one, not divided in all kind of different ways, in all kind of different cultures, and think it's going to work out well. It doesn't. So for those who are listening, imagine what it would look like if you were forced to keep your door open at night. And yes, you might have some really good people come by and they can visit and you'll have a good time, but you just never know. You just have no idea that one person might want to come and visit, says, I think I want to stay here. Not only stay here, I want to take your bedroom. You have no idea what these people are about. So my point is this: it is important that what we do in this country is done legally, it's done fairly, and there's order. There is order about God's plan. That's what makes it so exciting. That's what makes it. I can look at the North Star, and if I understood how to navigate by it, I don't care where I'm in the world, I can navigate by the North Star if I know how to do that. That's order. Chaos is the adversary. Chaos is where you cannot project past a certain point because you just don't know. You can't build a business in chaos. Mm-hmm. It's going to fail. You can't build a family in chaos. We want to have predictability so we know exactly what to expect. We can leave our house and go to the store and come back and know it's going to be safe. Once we lose that as a country, we lose everything that we are about. We do not grow as a nation with chaos. That's the adversary. So I want to go back to where we started off. Let's put everything in perspective to spiritual battle. We have good, which our country began with. Not that we're perfect people. We never have been, never will be. Well, we have to make sure that we're not the person that judges someone else because we think we're better than that. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
We have to remember that Heavenly Father uses all of us in the way He wants to. So let's look at the activity. Let's and I'll tell you one thing about President Trump. He did something back in October of 2016 that really got my attention because I was with a lot of folks. I didn't know anything about him. Mm-hmm. I was listening to the left. Now think about this: we listen to the people who hate God, telling us how bad this guy is. Tell me how to deal with people.
That's a good point.
Think about that.
Yeah.
All that information about how bad it is comes from the same source.
The same people who not only want to destroy the family, they want to destroy the very concept of male and female. And
they will lie to you every single day of the week and feel no shame. So the point I was making, what was the point I was making there?
2016, you had President Trump, something. You were listening to the left?
Yes, yes. Here's what I would suggest. Remembering again, and this helps me a whole lot. It really does. Um, as I continue to remember what the seed of our existence is, and obviously, we've come a long way from 200 years ago in terms of technology, but that the seed is good versus evil. Um, I remember October of 2016. Uh, President Donald Trump at the time was campaign. He put together what's called the New Deal for Urban America. He was the first person I'd ever seen to put down 10 points of what he would do to help the black community if he got a chance to get in. No one else have done that. Now, my my best president to me at the time was Ronald Reagan. He was my transitional president. But even Ronald Reagan had not put together a plan to support and help the black community. He talked about opportunity zones. There's 9,000 opportunity zones because of President Trump. Because of the opportunity to lower interest rates, to make sure that SBCUs that were in debt because of hurricanes for decades that was taken off their plate. When you look at a term of 5 or 4 years, the lowest inflation in 40 years. That's big for all. And these are not just black issues; these are across the board.
I mean, and something for Latter-day Saints. I mean, one of the key important issues for us is helping the poor.
That's right.
But there's a way of helping the poor that the church is sort of helping people in the Savior's way. And one of the unique things about the church is the church basically says that we want to help you to reach self-reliance.
That's right.
We are not a church that believes that just handing out fish is the way to go. We want to teach people how to fish. And I have to be honest. I mean, you just have to be honest. Any objective analysis is going to say that the left is not interested in making people self-reliant. It's interested in giving people something and saying, all right, I gave you something, now vote for me.
I talked about earlier how that community I grew up in was such a successful one. I can't not emphasize it enough, but it wasn't just Tallahassee, it's across the board. We had cousins in California and Washington, D.C. and Texas, and the middle class was very vibrant. All of us kids, all of us cousins looking at what college we want to go to. It was black colleges, but the black colleges were also competing to make sure they were the best. What did us in, believe it or not, was not white supremacists. It was those that looked like me that decided the best way to go is to get us dependent. There was a focus on getting welfare pushed through our system, through our communities. And I remember this distinctly, where I saw apartment units going up, HUD units going up. The only way you can get in there is you had to be a single black woman, could not have a husband, could not have a man in the house. You couldn't have a job. So it was a process in which they put these women on welfare, no man in the house, and men who came in were left in the morning. So just imagine what these young boys saw in terms of what example of manhood was. Yeah. They grew up also not respecting women, not expecting to go out and go to work. So I saw firsthand how welfare done in the wrong way for dependency's sake, for power, hurts us. What we do, we believe in self-sufficiency, empowering others to do for themselves, and then one day be able to give back. One of the things that is so important, keep this in mind, being employed is one of the greatest feelings of self-worth. People depend on you. You have a commitment to make. You make every single day. You're paid for that commitment. You have a tendency of wanting to rise in that area. Look at what happened with President Trump's 4 years. The highest employment for blacks, for women, and for veterans. Now, we don't hear that from the left because that's not what they want to do. You see success in so many different ways. That's why right now I look at what we have at this point. I have an opportunity this election to decide which way we're going to go. I don't think like no other time in our history.
So one of the things that you've mentioned here with this, the way of helping the poor, it's very deeply rooted in who we are as Latter-day Saints. I want to read a quote from Howard W. Hunter that I thought was just absolutely brilliant. He says, and for those who don't think that the church has anything to say on welfare programs and things like that, I think that this is very telling, because this was Howard W. Hunter said this. He said, What is the real cause of this trend towards the welfare state, towards more socialism? In the last analysis, in my judgment, it is personal unrighteousness. When people do not use their freedoms responsibly and righteously, they will gradually lose these freedoms. If a man will not recognize the inequalities around him and voluntarily, through the gospel plan, come to the aid of his brother, he will find that through the, quote, democratic process, he will be forced to come to the aid of his brother, and the government will take from the haves and give to the have-nots. Both have lost their freedom. Those who have lost their freedom to give voluntarily of their own free will in the way that they desire, and those who have not lost their freedom because they did not earn what they received. They got something for nothing, and they will neither appreciate the gift nor the giver of the gift.
That sounds like Satan to me.
Exactly.
That's his plan. No, it's one of selfishness, self-centeredness, of power, and using misery as a political strategy. I think we have a really good opportunity, and I look at what is our end game as a church, as members of the church. Our life goal is really how can we impact people's lives so they can see what we see and are drawn to Jesus Christ. So they give their lives over to the gospel plan of salvation so they can become better people and they pass that on. That's what our goal is. We're going to have that opportunity to do that. Sometimes people we know, sometimes people we don't know. But it is that plan that only comes when we have a free people. We have people that feel good enough about themselves, they don't take, they're willing to give. And that giving process, it doesn't matter how much, we have people who have very little means, but they just love to give whatever we have because they understand that is really what Heavenly Father wants of us. We have we have things happening where misery literally, there's no empathy, and I see too much of it. And I'm trying to stay as apolitical as I can, because I see it in legislative terms. I see it when it comes down to protecting children, protecting our border. Because, by the way, the border protection, we have over 320,000 unaccompanied kids that are lost now. Have no idea where they are.
Okay.
Now, I will say this for anybody listening to this. We all know that is the worst of evils, is to take advantage of innocence of our youth. We have unfortunately, people don't care. Their plan is to get folks in, use these kids as passports, and whatever it looks like. And the fact that we cannot identify where 320,000 kids, vulnerable kids, are that came by themselves, they come with their parents, says that we have to look at ourselves real deeply. As life's so busy, so full of things we're getting done, that we cannot pivot quickly to realize this is very evil for us not to know where children are that cannot take care of themselves. And we know there's sex trafficking out there, there's labor trafficking, there's people that will take advantage of innocence. And if we don't say something's wrong with that, if we don't say there's something wrong with the policy that allows that, because it's really about policy again. Policy shows up in these instances. Fentanyl, over 100,000 Americans have died. And by the way, that is very non-political. It doesn't matter if it's Republican, Democrat, Independent. You take that wrong pill and you've lost someone. Mm-hmm. These are things that I think as Latter-day Saints, we have to keep in mind what it is we're really trying to accomplish as we pull that lever. Are we saying we're going to pull a lever based on somebody I want to hang out with and be buddies with, and we're going to have lunch together? Or am I pulling that lever because I want my kids to have a much better life than I did? I want them running circles around me. I want them to be in a position where they can grow up and give like I'm hoping to do. If that's the focus, then it couldn't be a much stronger I guess, decision to make when you see the policy piece of it. So my request is for those who are listening, look at the policies. What's important to you? What's important to your kids' future? Education, by the way. Let me just say this. That's my passion. Education is my passion. I'm one of those guys who never thought politics would be any part of my career. And I started started a non-for-profit, which I thought would be my swan song because I spent 40 years figuring out how I'm going to work with at-risk kids. Started a non-profit called Second Chance for Youth, work with kids coming out of the juvenile system and helping them to get a new fresh start. And I've been doing it for about a couple of years until I realized that, it's like an open spigot. If we don't do something in D.C. that our kids can think, can have pride in themselves, our past, learn what respect is, then this is just going to get, this funnel is getting bigger and bigger. It's not going to slow down.
Can't fix it.
So that was the reason why I decided to go that direction. And I'll say this, for parents, the greatest gift you can give your child is not one that they will agree with everything you have to say, but that they will be able to think, that they will be able to be respectful in their process of thinking and argument and debate. My dad and I, also the greatest gift he gave me was not that I agreed with everything. He kind of liked it when I could come up with a good argument. He could see I was in the process of learning how to be a mature thinking adult because I was practicing as a kid. Parents, if you want a happy child, successful child, education is at the very core of it. If you're okay with voting for a policy that teaches our kid to be divisive, to judge each other from outside in instead of inside out, to think that there are some that are oppressed, and which is looking down on the black people, by the way.
Well, that's one. Actually, as a quick side note, I know we're getting low on time here, but President Nelson has told us as Latter-day Saints that we need to root out racism.
That's right.
Now, to me, if you were to exclude an entire racial group from your selection for vice president, if I said, I'm going to select a white man as my vice president, that to me would be problematic because I was under the impression that in this country, we're not supposed to judge people based on their race. We should choose whoever is best for the job, regardless of their color of their skin or who they are. And yet President Biden literally chose not only his vice president on the basis of her skin color, but also a Supreme Court justice on the same thing.
That's right.
And I don't know about you guys, but that's what's known as racial discrimination. And it's not only is it's wrong, in my opinion, it's illegal. But that to me is like, I don't know why Latter-day Saints would look at that and say, oh, this is okay.
Well, only and if you bought onto the fact that there are races that are more inferior. See, the whole concept of oppressed and the oppressor is that black people cannot stand up for themselves, so white people have to come to our aid. That is the most racist thing that I can ever think of. Now, unfortunately, we have Latter-day Saints who believe that they're going to fall into this whole line of thinking that we can't get an ID for voting. That unless I sit next to a white person, I can't really learn how to think. And this is what I feel so blessed. I grew up when I did. I grew up understanding what it is to be proud of who you are, proud of your race, and be willing to compete because you want to prove that you really can compete.
And you can. That's the thing. When you tell these kids you can't, the system is rigged against you because you're black. And to me, it's just like, what a depressing thing to tell someone.
Yeah.
To me, I look at a black person just like I look like anyone else. I say, you have every chance to make it if you try. Now, we all have our own disadvantages based on things, but my skin color doesn't tell me that.
That's not one of them. And the thing that we find out in things like sports and military, there's a point, and I realize this playing football, is a point where when the focus becomes winning, when the focus becomes who can help me to have a victory on that scoreboard, all of a sudden the exterior doesn't have anything to do with it. You're looking for productivity. You're looking for somebody who can fit in terms of team spirit. That is what our country's always been about. That's why we're the country to become a more perfect union, because we've had experiences like that, whether it be war, whether it be sports, whether it be military, whether it be just growing up and realizing that, folks are who they are. So always come back to this. It's a spiritual war. We're either going to become one, a more perfect union, we the people, or we become divided. We become divisive. Division, divisiveness, hatred, judgment is of the adversary. We have to keep that in mind in every decision we make. We can't just put that to the side and say, okay, I won't use it this time. We're right now at a very, very important point in our life because we're making those decisions. I'll say this: what I'm most excited about right now, I've always believed this, and I'll say the last 40 years, I've always looked at. I felt one day we'll come to a point where the Black community, the Hispanic community, those minorities who in the past were not at the table, but because we had centered on this culture of faith, family, free market education. Go to the Hispanic community, you see the same thing. That was kind of what we did have that could keep us moving forward. We're going to come to a point, which is happening right now, where our community start to pull ourselves back from the abyss. The Black community is coming back. We're now realizing that dads need to be in their home. We have dads that are standing up and saying, I'm tired of this stuff. Realize education is important. So all of a sudden, mothers are saying, I'm not going to deal with a school system that's not going to educate my kid. Where young men are saying, I want to be respected, and I'm not going to deal with anybody anymore. A party's going to put me down. So everything that we're doing is we're fighting for the opportunity to be one. So look at the policies. Policies like DEI is such a systemic evil that you teach somebody that, they will have a whole life they have to come out of that. You can teach somebody that as a young kid, like it was when I was growing up. When I was growing up, the biggest problem was I was part of I was one of the first 4 Blacks to go to this high school to integrate. I was the 3rd Black to go to the University of Miami. So we were all dealing with the fact that our parents had been taught a certain way, and we were kind of on the front line of breaking that down. We now look back and say, I'm so sorry that we were the front line. We wish we could have had a lot more fun together instead of breaking this process down. But here's the problem. If you're taught that, it's going to take a while to come out of that. Life experiences, it might take decades. It might not, I don't know how long it's going to take. So what they're doing now to teach us to be divided, to teach us that capitalism is bad. By the way, capitalism is a free market. Mm-hmm. That free market is where you have your hopes and dreams. You can take risks. You get back up because in this country you can fall and learn and can continue to grow. If you don't have the free market, we will shut our dreams to a certain level and keep it there. The free market says, you know what, I'm here, but man, in 10 years, what I can do if I just think of something different. Teach our kids to hate capitalism. That's Satan's work. Teach our kids to judge each other from outside in versus inside out, which I came out of. I'm never going to put up with that ever again. Never ever going to do that. That's Satan's work. Teach our kids that really, having a family, go out and do your job, do your business, build a big home. But, kids, that's not really that important. Well, when it becomes really important, when those individuals who are not married at 40, 50, 60 years old and realize, my, oh my, what did I miss out on? What did I miss now that I'm older and I don't have the relationships? I never had a chance to see a young person grow up that I had influence on. I never had a chance to see the pride in my work, in my legacy. Mm-hmm. There's something about the family that, first of all, is God's plan. So my point is this, and I've said it before, please look at where these policies fit spiritually.
Absolutely.
If they start adding up where it's all on one side, not spiritual, don't vote on that, please. Because what it comes down to, and that's one of the things about a free country, our actions, our votes, our attitudes, it will impact our nation, but we also have to be responsible for it because it's also going to impact us.
As I look at the election, I've thought a lot about, there are people who have this trepidation about President Trump because he'll tweet something that, we all kind of, he tweeted that. But like you're saying, when it comes to those policies and to what they actually create in the world, good versus evil, I start to go down, I think about issues that matter to Latter-day Saints, war and peace. Yeah. I mean, we really think the world's more peaceful now than it was under Donald Trump?
New wars. We had no new wars. So there's something called respect and fear.
Abortion. Yeah. I mean, what side are we on with abortion here?
Yeah.
I mean, Kamala Harris, it's like there is no restriction.
Yep.
President Trump, his policies aren't way off what the church itself has.
Yeah.
I mean, caring for the poor. We've talked all about
can I
that.
say something?
Yeah.
This is very important, particularly for us who understand this plan of salvation. We understand that this is just a little small time of a lifetime, and that's important to realize that. Okay, let me segue real quick, just one
Yeah,
quick.
absolutely.
I'm a person who became a member of the church because of something that happened 4 or 5 years before. My mom passed away when I was 26 years old, and very close. Our family was very, very tight. My mom was the core, the center of our household. And I remember for the first time not knowing where she was. I mean, I went through a process of trying to figure out, all those questions you ask about somebody you just lost. And of course, I put it to the side because there's really no answers until I started talking to my elders and realized that families are together forever, that this is just a small phase, this chapter we're going through, and we have a chance to move on and we'll see everybody again. I understand we take that for granted, but someone as a convert, that's very, very important to understand the power of what our life can mean. That being said, the Black community has been the target of abortionists. It's always been that way. The Black community was a target from the very beginning. Was a singer,
Margaret Sanger, and
she was a narcissist. She was what's the word?
Eugenicist.
She was a eugenicist, but also a Nazi advocate, and she hated Black people. She looked at it as weeds. So abortion was really to get rid of those who were not really worthy of life. Understand this. And I want everybody to just keep this in mind when you think about the impact that this one act, one policy is what it's doing to the Black community. For the 40 years, 20 million Black babies were exterminated, were aborted, because abortion centers were put into Black communities. That's 40% of my race. How many George Washingtons or how many Abraham Lincolns or how many Booker T. Washingtons potential that could have given us so much more, but we have a policy that sees all these folks as weeds, as just weeds, as just throw away. So I want that to be a part of the equation as you're thinking about direction. Do we believe that God's plan is that everyone has value, that even those who come to us that need more help, they give value? Because I tell you, we lean over backwards, really understand what service from the heart, what love, unconditional love comes down to. We're having children or friends that need that extra help. Well, that's God's plan too, is to break our hearts so we can actually be a better parent or brother or friend. And that's a big part of this plan. So I would say of all the things that I would consider, that's at the very top. I know how blessed I am, so blessed to have my 6 kids and 17 grands. It is, when I think about it, all said and done, nothing else I've done is more important than that. When I go through NFL, Super Bowl, Congress, none of that, because that's all transitional. It's all going to go away. At some point, we're going to look back and you're going to see soon with your boys. On a heartbeat, they're up and out and their own families. One thing that's eternal is life we give and life we take care of, and the legacy we want to leave behind when it's all said and done. So that really is God's plan. That destruction of life, destruction of businesses, which we saw you have BLM. Every part of that was making sure that these Black business owners could not survive. So all the riots were always in Black communities, because business ownership leads to that middle class. That middle class leads to liberty and culture. So understand that's this plan here.
And those are spiritual things that a lot of people in the church, they kind of put this sharp division between, like, okay, there's sort of my political life over here and my religious life over here, when it's like, you don't understand that what we do in some of these policies, they have real impact on human beings. And what could be more spiritual than that, than the great spiritual battle between liberty or slavery, between agency and empowering other people by knowing their divine worth, the importance of the family, the protection of the family, the protection of life, the rule of obeying and sustaining the law when it comes to things like immigration. And people don't realize that that happens, or they get caught up in what the media says about Donald Trump, but they lose sight of the bigger picture and how that relates to who they are as a Latter-day Saint.
Yeah.
And then they get lost in it. And I know we're getting low on time here, so I'll kind of give you.
Let's not worry about the time.
Yeah. All right. Absolutely. So
let me just say this. We should always frame everything. Now that we know, we're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Everything is spiritual. Everything is spiritual. So that's the lens we should take it through. Think about this. Think about what this means to these kids. I wrote a book a while back, and in the process, I did some research, found out in 2017, 75% of the black boys in the state of California cannot pass standard reading and writing tests, cannot read and write. You look in D.C., those 13 districts, zero proficiency in math. Now, keep in mind, education is tied to freedom, because education allows us to have critical thinking skills, to have a dream, to not be emotional, but be pragmatic sometimes, strategic at times, but always hopeful, because we've also been able to reach in and read about Heavenly Father's plan for us. Take away that component and think about the mental slavery that's happening. I would say I'll take physical slavery any day over mental, because physical, if you're free in mind, you'll figure out a way.
yeah,
You will never give up.
that's a great point.
You'll learn something from experience and be able to provide hope for somebody else. Mental slavery is darkness. There's nothing you can do physically, because mentally you're already there. You're stuck away, and nothing's going to happen. There is an ideology that does that on purpose. The ideology says, you know what, we're not going to take care of your kids, but we don't want you to move. If you do move, I'm going to make sure it's such a small number that we always have this flow of angry and sad and depressed and illiterate people. My race was not that way when I was growing up. And that's my point. It's not hypothetical to me what I see happening, the spiritual battle. When you have kids who cannot read, write, think, and have math. And this is, by the way, it's not happening just to black kids anymore. It was initially, because we were the target initially. But now we're seeing it with COVID. Parents had the chance to pull back the curtains. And they realize no matter what zip code you live in, they're being taught some really nutty, crazy stuff. And
I would say that's like my wife. That has been something for her. And I know so many people that watch, they have the exact same experience. You start to look at what is going on in your schools. And I would say to all the listeners, look into exactly what your school is teaching your children, because you will find out that, and you can look at the theory, where this all comes from. You have Marxist academics that have gotten into the academic system, taken over the schools of education, and they begin to educate in a way that teaches all of these things that you're talking about that cause a mental enslavement of the mind. And then they put in place policies through the Democrat Party with things like denying school choice to black children who are stuck in bad schools, and you're not allowing them to get out of that.
Well, again, you have to think. These adults that have been given the responsibility to make sure the kids are growing up and producing. And I guess that's the key, is look at where the choices are not. They talk about choice for abortion because they love that. When it comes down to choice for our kids going to school, they don't want that because they don't want competition. So we have to, first of all, the upside of COVID was that we have a chance to have conversations now that we just didn't have before. I call it the freedom bubble. We have to live in this freedom bubble. And it's fun to be there because we're thinking about our kids, our vacations, our memories, our business, our jobs, retirement one day. And it's kind of where we can be because we live in a free country. What we don't realize is on the outside of that bubble is pure evil. On the steps of that bubble is an ideology that wants to store everything that we believe in, that we work within that freedom bubble. And how do they do that? Well, they're strategic enough to go at the weakest, the most vulnerable, and that's our children. So it doesn't matter. I mean, we talk about DEI, we talk about Marxism. Yes, Marxism has been around for a long time. It was started back in the 1930s, but it started off in the college level, higher education, to teach the teachers how to be that way. And then those teachers end up going into the school system, the K through 12, and then kindergarten. or they go out into the NFL, wherever it might be, corporations. It's been a long, subtle intergenerational attack, and only Satan can do that because he just does different people, but it's a different phase. And over time, we begin to kind of get washed away subtly into an area that we just didn't know that was going to be there. Again, the upside of COVID was it happened so fast, and we took so much for granted until we woke up one day and said, "Wait a minute, I can't open my business. I have to get a shot, or I'm going to lose my job.
Mhm.
I mean, I can't keep my kids in school even though they're not vulnerable. I can't put them in school. I mean, you go through a litany of things. I can't go to church, or they might come and arrest me."
The real irony I always thought was the funny, my body, my
That's-
choice. I don't know how that slogan has ever made a comeback
Yeah.
after COVID, because it was like, my body, my choice. Unless it's COVID, then no. And it's like,
Well, here's
So-
here's the thing we have to recognize because as we're talking, we have this tendency we want to kind of use critical thinking skills to find a solution, to find this place that we can agree that this might be the way to go. Understand when darkness it enters the mindset, there's not an effort of trying to find common ground. It's like a religion almost. You have to understand that. I mean, abortionists, that's a religion for some people.
Mhm.
I mean, they will do anything that everybody else, now, they might not, or maybe they did and they just don't feel bad about it now. But I just can imagine the amount of passion it takes to go out and help and tell other people to kill their babies. To tell other people that you should not think this is a precious moment, a precious package. So anyway, that being said,
I was going to say one thing on that. The spiritual forces at play in all of this. It is interesting as I've gotten more into this realm of exploring all the policies and things. You begin to wonder, like, what is the energy driving this other side of the equation? And I'm not going to say that one side has all of the evil energy.
Yeah.
I think there can be evil energy amongst all groups of people, but there are certain ideologies out there that are so pernicious.
Mhm.
And I look at it, I oftentimes feel bad for the people who adopt these ideologies, because oftentimes what it is, it's a hijacking of their good things that they want. Like maybe they say, well, freedom is a good thing, therefore people are more free if they are able to have abortions and things like that. But it's this twisting of these people that ordinarily would be good people.
Yeah.
And I think this is literally how evil works. It is a spirit that takes a good person and takes the good in them and then twists it in a way to use it for evil purposes.
Yeah.
Because those people who adopt these ideologies, in their mind, we're the good guys. But they don't realize how it's been twisted.
Yeah, and you nailed it. And I look at it this way because you have really good people in the Democratic Party, really do, some really good people. But what has happened over time, and I see this with the KKK, BLM, Antifa, the pro-Hamas. Keep in mind what is consistent. They hide their faces. They hide their faces. They're cowards. They do it in gangs. So the power is in the gang and anonymity, so that there'll never be any consequences. So I see that, and I look at the Democratic Party. There are good people, but behind them are people who will use good people for their benefit. And then the minute you start talking about the party, then the Marxists in the back said, "How can you talk about these good people like that?" You have to make a point. No, it's not them. It's those who drive this idea that we have to judge each other like we used to do in the days of segregation. That we feel good that people are in pain and anxious and not feeling safe anymore. There is an ideology which is pure evil. That's the Satan. Satan's whole thing is, as we all know, just as God is love, Satan is hate. And the worst thing for him is to see us happy, to see us unified, to see us kind of moving in the right direction. So everything that is about the adversary is stopping the idea of us coming through to have these choices and growing as we're growing spiritually to want to go to the next to when they one day go to the next phase and continue to progress in areas we want to. So that's he doesn't want that to happen. So that's why he would stop it as much as he can.
And here's one of the things that is, again, where good gets twisted, because there's an idea of, we do believe in the church in avoiding the spirit of contention, but the scriptures also tell us to contend against evil. And to, there's Jude talks about contending, the Doctrine and Covenants talk about contending, but in a way where we are confronting evil. And there are those who would say that when you confront evil by saying, hey, this is wrong, they'll say you're being contentious. Mm-hmm. And I think that is another way that the devil will take something good. Because you're right, we don't want to have enmity and hatred towards those who are doing things that are wrong or that have adopted bad ideologies. Like, we should love those who are doing things that are wrong, of course, but we still should hate evil.
Yeah.
Because evil harms people at every level. And there are those that will literally, and I get this from people, where they'll be like, oh, well, this is just so contentious and we need to avoid that. Well, it's like, you're never going to be able to confront evil without conflict.
Yeah. And I think when you think about the lessons learned from our young people who go out and serve, they get outside their comfort zone, they get away from parents that they feel safe around, and they're all of a sudden in a whole new country, learning a new language, where people say no. What we learn in that process is what courage looks like, because it does take courage to stand up against evil. It takes courage to really become the best we can be, because I'm going to reflect back on football, because that's one of the areas I really learned a little bit about courage, and that is make a play, and I ducked my head or I did something I didn't feel was courageous. I closed my eyes and I said, okay, I'm never going to do that again. So the next time I build on that and make sure I don't do that again. So courage is a habit too. It's something that you build upon time after time, decision after decision. Before you know it, becomes like muscle memory. And so that's what I have to look at when it comes down to dealing with evil. No, we don't like to be not liked. And I think that's the biggest obstacle some people have to face. I was very fortunate. I had a dad who I saw him make very principled stance. I saw what it was not to be a part of the crowd, but he did what he felt was right. So for me to see that, it was easy for me to say, okay, I'm going to be more like that. Next time we'll do better. We'll do better. To a point where that's kind of the way I see life. A small group of people that I really care about. Principles is based on God's plan that has for me, and knowing that everything will work out in the end, at the end of the day. So my message for those who have a tendency to sometimes want to pull back and just to get along, it's okay. That might be your personality. Just take little steps at a time to get more and more courageous, so that the decisions you make are made on what's going to help you and your relationship with Heavenly Father, versus your relationship with somebody who might not be there next year or two, 5, 10 years. It will be a passing, and so you just you put in the context of one relationship that really does matter in the long run.
Absolutely, and that is ultimately, we do have to ask ourselves. And in the realm of politics, a lot of times it's about pleasing people, and there are many politicians who the game that they're playing is the game of acquiring power by trying to say things that will make them popular, rather than standing on principles. And I do think that taking that principled stand, like you say, it's simply going to create enemies. Like our Savior Jesus Christ.
You can't get away from it.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Did he cause conflict?
And he was perfect.
Exactly. It was because he was perfect that conflict arose. And so we, I think, have to do a better job as Latter-day Saints when we look at the public sphere of political action, of, like you said, remembering all things are spiritual, and learning to decipher which one of these policies and ideas that are being implemented on that level, not just the media spin, but what actually happens in the real world, is this moving our country And are people closer to God?
Yeah.
Or is it moving it farther away?
I would say, and as you were talking, I was just thinking about the process that we're now having, this conversation we're now having, and decisions people are making based on personalities. And I would say that the lesson that I learned way back when I left the NFL as a very cocky NFL player, kind of thinking that anything I did, I was going to work hard enough, I could make it happen, until I realized, there's more to it than just working real hard. But the key is to continue to work on being as humble as you can possibly be. That never ends either. The moment we say I'm a very humble, I'm at the top of my game, that's when you start to take on pride. So the key is how can we stay spiritually based, and that's why the scripture is so important. That's why going to the temple is so important. That's why every Sunday a sacrament is saying that I don't have it all together. I know I can do better, and humbleness is a big piece of that. We should never get to the point where we feel that we are the perfect arbitrator of who's right and who's good and who's bad. um, Heavenly Father uses everyone. I mentioned Alma the Younger. You go through the scriptures. Is it Zeram? Zeram?
Zizram?
Zeram. That is a remarkable story, because he literally was on the other side as a lawyer, trying to was it Amalek that he was.
Yes.
Amalek, yeah. So, and at the end of the day, he ended up being one of the missionaries. He went the whole circle because he realized he had that internal conversation in which the Spirit touched him the right way. We began to find truth. We should always be looking for that truth. Never think that we have it, that we're perfect with it. And then look at that, take that truth and take it outside ourselves to things that impact our family and our country. And that's what's going on right now. I think we have probably the most important, most consequential decision to make this term. Do we keep a country that's free, one that embraces all of us, one that says we should look at each other from inside out, not outside in? Whatever our differences are, we can bring everything to the plate to find a common ground. Or are we going to burn things down? Are we going to call people names because they're a different religion or different race? Are we going to hide our faces? That's a big piece. Whenever people hide their faces, that is a place in a party to get away from.
Mm-hmm.
I can go back to again, KKK. They did the same thing.
Yeah.
BLM, they did the same thing. Antifa. When you cannot show yourself, your face, it means you're doing some bad things, and you don't think you're going to have any consequences. And because you don't believe in God, you think you can get away with it. And that's the part that really gets it. People hide their faces because they don't think that God sees them. They don't quite get that.
And it's funny. They're acknowledging their own shame.
That's right.
That somewhere deep down inside, they know this isn't right, so I have to hide myself. But you make a great point. We as Latter-day Saints should never be hiding our faces.
No.
We should be standing as a city on a hill that is standing on principle no matter where it takes us, even if it takes us to the cross.
That's right. And for those who are not quite there, that's okay. Understand courage is a habit. I cannot say that enough. Let me give you an example of probably the first time that I remember being taught what courage looked like and felt like. If you remember seeing the movie Remember the Titans, that I was one of 4 blacks to integrate this all-white high school in 4th grade and 10th grade. And everything was colored. I mean, you walk in and everything was black and white. You're either somebody's calling your name or you're about to fight somebody, the whole bit. I was a sophomore. I was running back. And there was this junior guy named Larry. He was a linebacker. I was a running back. And Larry was a very dark, deep racist. Now, he changed later on. But he was just an angry, but he was also bigger, faster, stronger, meaner than the rest of us. So I would get the football in practice, and Larry, every single play, would try to hurt me. And I remember thinking, what am I going to do with this guy? I mean, he just doesn't stop. He's just, what's the word I look for? Anyway, he wouldn't stop. So I went to my dad and said, Dad, this is what's going on. So Dad said, well, Burgess, this is what you do. Next day in practice, when you get the football, you go to the line and you look for Larry. And when you find Larry, you run at him as fast as you can and hit him as hard as you can. Now, keep in mind, up to this advice, I would find Larry and go the other way as fast as I could. That was never an option.
Hey, I coach my son's running backs on his team, and I actually give him that same advice.
Yeah.
You run at the guy you want to, it's trying to tackle you.
What's interesting is there was a decision I had to make. Number one, because Dad wasn't going to be there with me when I had to deal with the consequences. I still had to deal with Larry. He was a bigger, stronger, meaner, the whole bit. But I said, I'm going to do this. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Ran through the line, so the line just miraculously just opened up, and there was Larry to my right. I turned at him. I ran as hard as I could, and it shocked him. It set him back. He had not expected that because bullies don't expect to hit by anybody else. And my coach got upset with me because I thought I was trying to start a fight, trying to throw me off the team. But it was one of the more special moments of my life, and I think for Larry too. For me, I realized what it was to attack fear. You do it, and at the end of it, you feel really good and accomplished. It wasn't so bad after all. The other thing is that was the beginning of changes for Larry. It was the first time anybody ever going up against him. And he was a bully against everybody, by the way. So nobody ever went up against him. For someone to do that was different. So he had to start getting a little bit of respect. About 5 years later, he went to Florida State. I went to Miami. We were both an all-star team together on the same team. And I remember coming off the field, going to the locker room, and I'm sitting around this little circle of my black friends who were sitting around. And here comes Larry. Larry comes in and sits down right next to us because he had changed. Over time, whatever he had to go through, the humble process, the idea that someplace in his mind he began to realize that what he was taught was wrong. And he began to accept others based on the interior versus exterior. So he changed. I had a chance to see that change, and also had a chance to see that the genesis of that change might have been the one time that I ran at him and challenged him. So my point I was making, we're all at different phases of courage. The key is just take every little opportunity you have to grow on it. And if you find yourself in a position where you took a step back, make a conscious decision. Next time I get this opportunity, I'm going to do it the right way. And before you know it, it's a habit. You're more courageous than you thought you were in the past. All of a sudden, making decisions, whether people like you or not, it's not that hard. Just do it and move on.
That's awesome. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. We've gone through a wide variety of things. And I want to give you kind of the final word. Is there anything that you want in this current environment, kind of to sum up your final thoughts, that you want the audience to understand as we approach, again, a contentious election season, that you want them to take away from this conversation?
Yes. I've been blessed to have understood the history of our country. I grew up at a time where we were taught history. My dad was a World War II vet, so I was taught about patriotism. I had a chance to walk to school for a period of time early in the morning, early enough to raise the flag and make sure that we lowered the flag and never touched the ground. So I was blessed to understand the special place our country was. And knowing that history, it's important for those who are listening to recognize that that hasn't changed. This is God's land. We're here for a special reason. It's not accident that we're here in this generation. I think we're going to look back and at some point, hopefully tell our kids, our grandkids, that we were there when America was about to go over the edge, because that's where we are. If we don't get this together, Marxists will take over. And Marxism is about destruction, it's divisiveness, it's bullying, it's taking power. And when you can't pull back, you get a Venezuela. That's what ends up. Great potential, great country at one point. People are leaving there in droves because they don't have freedom anymore. So we are as susceptible, and we are as it was in the Book of Mormon. We'll be given the blessings if we're on the right side of this. If we care about our country, we care about our families. We care about, I would say the most important thing, the opportunity for generations behind us to hear about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. That's really what our goal is to set up this environment that the legacy is that, like it was with me, I had a chance to learn about the Lord. I had a hunger to learn more when the right time was right, and it continued to let me know until I got to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Our goal should be that vehicle, that's the vessel, be that vessel that, whether it be on a broader sense of policies that the United States is now going through, whether individually, the way we deal with each other, um, to make sure that we are on the blessing side of this process. This is a very important time. I know my goal at the end of the day will not be what I did in the NFL, and it'll be what have I done to change the trajectory of our educational system. So we will never have those statistics where 75% of our boys cannot read and write. That will go away because of something we did as a team, because as a country put the right people in, that for generations to come, Black, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter what the color is, they're getting what they need to have the best education, the best opportunity to build their dreams. And this is our moment to get it done. So for those that are listening, please don't get caught up in personalities. Keep in mind the men and women we listen to, we read about in the Bible and Book of Mormon. I can't think of any personalities yet. I mean, I can't think of any.
No, there's a lot of interesting personalities in the scriptures for sure.
Well, and what it is, when I say personalities, there are people who make decisions. They have direction. They have leadership skills. How they treated strangers or what they might have said, we don't have a record of that. We just know that they made decisions to make bold changes in their lives and others. That's what we should be looking at. What is it that we're doing to make bold decisions? And right now, this is the point we're at to do so.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me today, Congressman Owens. It's been a real pleasure, and hope we can do something like this again sometime.
Thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, Jacob, for sure. Absolutely.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button so my future videos show up on your feed. Also, if you or someone that you know has benefited from the content here on Thoughtful Faith, please consider becoming a channel donor or volunteer by visiting my new website, thoughtfulfaith.org, and clicking on the Get Involved page.